talk us through the worst case scenario here.
How bad can this get?
Lioness Season 3 Episode 4 could completely change the game, because after everything that happened in Episode 3, Jo is no longer simply trying to find the enemy. She may have to survive the consequences of exposing them. The team is now racing against time. Jo's family is becoming more afraid, and the biggest question is still hanging over everything. Was Alexandra telling the truth, or has Jo already fallen into the trap that Russia wanted her to enter? Episode 3 ended with Jo making a very dangerous decision, and the Episode 4 trailer, titled Murder Hornets, seems to show that this decision is about to create an even bigger crisis. So let's break down everything we learned from Episode 3, and what could happen next, because there are some very interesting details hidden in this situation. Episode 3 was a very different kind of Lioness episode because instead of giving us non-stop action, it spent a lot of time showing us how dangerous the situation has become behind the scenes. Jo and her team were trying to understand exactly who they could trust, and Alexandra became one of the biggest mysteries of the entire season. The interrogation was important because Jo needed to know whether Alexandra was really a Ukrainian asset who had information about Russian operations, or whether she was secretly playing a much bigger game. Kyle seemed convinced that Alexandra was not working for Russia and ended the interrogation, but Jo clearly wasn't satisfied. And honestly, I think Jo was right to remain suspicious. After everything we have seen in this season, trusting someone simply because they survive an interrogation would be a huge mistake. Alexandra knows how intelligence operations work, she understands how people think, and most importantly, she knows exactly what information the Americans want to hear. That makes her extremely valuable, but it also makes her extremely dangerous. The more information she gives the Lioness team, the more power she has over the way they understand the entire situation. And this is where Episode 4 becomes really interesting. The official synopsis says that a frantic hunt is launched as the team races against time, while Neil struggles with growing fears at home. That tells us that the consequences of Jo's decision are going to move very quickly. Jo has already realized that simply waiting for the enemy to make the next move is not enough. Instead, she wants to force them to react. And this is exactly what makes the ending of Episode 3 so important. Jo decides to use information about Alexandra to provoke the people behind the operation. On the surface, this sounds like a smart intelligence move. If the Russians believe one of their people has been captured, they may panic, make a mistake, contact someone they shouldn't, or try to silence someone who knows too much. But there is another side to this plan. What if the enemy knows that Jo is trying to provoke them? What if they already understand how Jo thinks? In that case, the entire operation could become a trap where Jo believes she is hunting them, while they are actually leading her exactly where they want her to go. And that is why I think the title Murder Hornets is especially interesting. A hornet does not need to be stronger than its target to be dangerous. It simply needs to keep attacking until the target is overwhelmed. That could be a perfect description of what is coming for Jo and the Lioness team. Instead of one clear enemy, we could start seeing multiple threats appearing at the same time, forcing the team to react again and again until they make one mistake. We also need to talk about Jo's family because this part of the story could become just as important as the intelligence operation. Episode 3 made it very clear that Jo's daughters are becoming increasingly afraid of what her job is doing to their family. They already know that something is wrong, and after the danger surrounding him, it is becoming harder for Jo to convince them that everything is under control. Now the official description for Episode 4 specifically mentions Neil struggling with growing fears at home. And I think this is a major warning sign. Jo has always been able to separate her professional life from her personal life, but this season is making that separation almost impossible. The enemy is no longer operating somewhere far away. The danger has reached Jo's house, her children, and the people closest to her. So even if Jo wins the intelligence battle, she could still lose something much more personal. And this is where Neil could become extremely important. If Neil becomes convinced that Jo's work is putting the family in constant danger, he may start pushing her to walk away completely. But Jo is not someone who can simply switch off her responsibilities. She knows too much, she has too many enemies, and after what happened to her, leaving the Lioness program might not even guarantee safety. In fact, it could make things worse because Jo would still be a valuable target even after leaving the agency. So I think episode 4 could push Jo toward a decision where she has to choose between protecting her family by stepping back or protecting them by finishing the operation once and for all. And honestly, I don't think Jo is going to step away. If anything, I think what happened to her family will make her even more determined. Now let's go back to Alexandra, because there is still one question I cannot ignore. Why does the American side trust her so much? Yes, she has provided information that appears to be extremely valuable. Yes, she seems to understand the Russian network. And yes, her knowledge could help the Lioness team find the people working against them. But if she is actually telling the truth, then why does everything around her still feel so suspicious? And if she is lying, what exactly is her end goal? One possibility is that Alexandra is genuinely helping America, but she is still hiding something because she has her own agenda. Another possibility is much darker. She may be telling the truth about some things while deliberately hiding the most important piece of information. That would make her much more dangerous than a simple double agent. Because if she gives the Americans enough accurate information to earn their trust, she can then control what they believe about everything else. And this could explain why Jo has been uncomfortable with her from the beginning. Jo does not need to prove that Alexandra is lying. She only needs to know that there is still something she doesn't understand. And when it comes to intelligence work, that small gap in knowledge can be the difference between a successful mission and a disaster. There is also another character I am still watching very closely, and that is Caitlin. We have already seen that Caitlin and Jo are not always on the same page, and Jo's decision to make the situation public could create even more tension between them. Caitlin understands the political consequences of every move, while Jo is focused more directly on the people in the field, and the lives that are being put at risk. That difference could become a major problem. If Jo starts believing that someone inside the government is compromised, she may stop trusting even the people who are supposed to be helping her. And that is exactly what the enemy would want. Think about it. You don't always have to defeat an intelligence team directly. Sometimes all you need to do is make them question each other. If Jo starts doubting Caitlin, Caitlin starts doubting Jo, and the rest of the team starts wondering who is leaking information, then the Lioness unit becomes weaker without the enemy having to fire a single shot. This is why I still think the idea of an internal mole is important. Episode 3 gave us enough information to believe that foreign operatives may have found ways to influence people inside America, but we still don't know how deep the network goes. And if Episode 4 is really about a frantic hunt, then I think the team may finally begin connecting some of these pieces. But there is one possibility that worries me even more. What if Jo's plan actually works? That sounds like good news, but it could create another problem. If the Russians react to the information about Alexandra, the Lioness team could discover a real connection. They could find a handler, a location, or another person inside the network. But once that connection is exposed, the enemy will know that their operation has been compromised. And when an intelligence network realizes that someone is getting close, the next move is usually not to sit and wait. They move. They disappear. They destroy evidence. They sacrifice people. And they may even create a false trail to make the Americans chase the wrong target. This is why the hunt in Episode 4 could become much more dangerous than it sounds. The team may think they are chasing the enemy, but every step forward could actually be taking them deeper into a carefully prepared operation. And Jo is especially vulnerable because she is emotionally involved now. She isn't just trying to complete a mission anymore. She wants answers about who attacked her, why her family was targeted, and who inside the system may have allowed it to happen. That emotional pressure could make Jo take risks that she normally would not take. At the same time, Neil's growing fear at home could force her to confront something she has been avoiding for a long time. The possibility that being the person everyone depends on is slowly destroying the life she is trying to protect. This season has been building toward that conflict from the beginning, and Episode 4 could push it even further. Another important point is that Episode 4 is officially titled Murder Hornets, and it is scheduled to continue the story on August 23rd. The title itself makes me think that the threat will become more aggressive and more unpredictable. We may not get one giant confrontation immediately. Instead, I think the episode could show the enemy responding in smaller but more dangerous ways, forcing Jo's team to keep moving while they try to identify who is actually behind everything. And if that happens, I wouldn't be surprised if one character suddenly becomes much more suspicious than before. Maybe it is Caitlin. Maybe it is someone we have barely noticed. Or maybe Alexandra has been telling the truth all along, and the real traitor is still completely hidden. That would actually be the most interesting direction for the story because it would keep the audience guessing. Right now, we are looking at Alexandra and asking whether she is the Russian agent, but what if the real purpose of her story is to make us focus on her while someone else operates in the background? Jo could spend all her time trying to understand Alexandra, while the actual enemy continues moving. And that would make the episode 4 hunt even more dangerous. So my biggest prediction is that Jo's plan will produce results, but not the results she expects. She may finally get a lead on the Russian network, but that lead could come with a huge price. And I also think the family storyline is going to become much more emotional, because Neil's fear is no longer something that can be ignored. The official episode description directly puts that fear alongside the team's desperate hunt, which suggests the show is going to connect Jo's personal and professional problems even more closely. And honestly, that is what makes this season so interesting. The biggest danger to Jo may not be the person holding a weapon. It may be the fact that every decision she makes for her job is now affecting the people she loves. So as we go into episode 4, I am watching 3 major questions. First, will Jo's trap actually expose the Russian network? Or will the enemy turn the trap back on her? Second, is Alexandra really helping the Lioness team? Or is she slowly controlling what they believe? And finally, how much longer can Jo protect her family while continuing to live this life? Because if the enemy has already reached her home, then this is no longer just a mission. It is personal. And once a war becomes personal for someone like Jo, that is when things become truly dangerous. Now I want to hear your theories. Do you think Alexandra is genuinely helping Jo? Or is she secretly manipulating the entire Lioness team? And do you think Jo's plan will finally expose the Russian network? Or is she walking directly into another trap? Let me know in the comments.